got married, very quickly got divorced, realised what the fuck have I done? My career actually at the time was a bit of a lifeline. However, in January, things really started to take a bit of a turn for the worse. I have to stop letting life happen around me. I have to actually zone into my intuition and my gut feel. If you think about LinkedIn, and that for me is one of the most powerful channels. Put yourself out there, find your voice, find your confidence, and you grow as a person. Those 3 Fs, the freedom, the fulfillment, and the...
Welcome to the What the Fuck Happened podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Sam, and we're co-hosts of this podcast.
We talk to leaders in the marketing world and lift the lid on what success truly is.
And it's all about that moment of chaos that breeds success.
With every episode, we'll be speaking to new guests, diving into the what the fuck happened moments that shaped them.
And we're interested in the fine, gritty details. No story is a straight line, no journey is a straight line, and the squiggle is something we're going to ask every guest to draw out at the end. Welcome to the What the Fuck Happened podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Emily. Now, this podcast is all about journeys. As we all know, journeys have ups and downs. You're currently on an up, but you started on a down. 12 months ago, you were back living with your mum, having left your job, and kind of working out what to do next. And we're going to talk about that today.
What the fuck happened there?
I'm Sam Ramsden, founder of Dojo Films and host today of the What the Fuck Happened podcast. Today, I'm here with Emily. Emily, what's your name and where'd you come from?
So I'm Emily. I'm the founder of the Good Marketing Club and really pleased to be here. So I run a online marketing business where the Good Marketing Club is my brand name, but ultimately what I do is I work with early stage startups to help them with brand and marketing fractional leadership. But what I'm really passionate about and what I'm kind of gearing a bit more towards is personal branding. So helping founders tell their stories in a more, human-led way.
The whole idea of the What the Fuck Happened podcast is it's an exploration of those moments in life. I guess success bred out of chaos. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether you've had a little look back through the looking glass at your life and career. Hopefully you have. But do you have that what the fuck moment in your head?
Yes. So mine isn't like necessarily an incident that happened, but I think just a time of my life, which was directly a year ago. So January 2024, in general, just a very chaotic time of my life. So for context, in my personal life, I had gone through a pretty turbulent few months, got married, very quickly got divorced, realised what the fuck have I done? This isn't the right thing for either of us. Fortunately, we had a very amicable separation, but basically sold everything. Sold my house, sold the car, moved back in with my mum. So questioning a lot of what am I going to do with my life? Really feeling like a failure. And that was the personal side. And then professionally, I loved my job at the time. I was head of marketing for a Series B, getting to do some of the best work of my life, traveling the world, just really enjoying my career. And I think my career actually at the time was a bit of a lifeline. However, in January, things really started to take a bit of a turn for the worse. So for 2.5 years, I didn't really have a manager, and I had the autonomy and the trust to go and do the things that I really believed in, using my gut feel to go and make a real success out of the initiative, the brand campaigns that we were doing. And then new management came in. So I was sent to India for our first company offsite, and it was just the worst week ever, where we're all together as a team. We were working completely remotely. So for the first time, we're all in the same place, and new management that had come in was obviously wanting to make their mark. And I was just grilled relentlessly for the whole week. But in particular, there was one day where literally for 4 hours, I was having to present and was just being hammered. And so I felt pretty demotivated. And I remember speaking to a colleague, Dinesh, who's now a really good friend. And he gave me some really good advice, because I think you often need people in your corner that don't necessarily tell you what you need to hear. They want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. And so I was saying to him, I was like, look, I'm just really lost at the moment. I have no fucking clue. Like, what am I doing? Where am I going? I knew that I didn't want to be in the UK anymore. I had this gut feel that my next move would not be in the UK. But I was questioning, like, where do I go? Do I move to the US? Do I move to Singapore? I was doing a lot of work in Asia at the time. And he was like, you're just really overcomplicating this. You speak a lot about Italy. Again, for context, I was starting to spend a lot of time in Tuscany. And that was just somewhere that I felt really calm. I felt really inspired. I felt my energy was really good. And he was like, you're overcomplicating this. Why don't you just go to Italy and see how it goes? Worst case scenario, you don't like it, you can book a flight back. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. Like, I then took myself off to Goa for the remainder of that trip to go and work remotely. And I decided, like, I've got to make some really big changes here, and I've got to start taking ownership for the life that I want, not using the same excuses, blaming certain scenarios. Like, it's now time for me to really be in the driving seats. And so from there, it just kind of started to snowball. I booked a trip to fly to Florence to see how easy it would be to get an apartment. Ended up finding my dream apartment. And from there, it snowballed. I was still working at that same company, went on a trip to Sydney for another conference. And so my personal life had started to go really good because I had this new apartment. I had started to make friends. I joined a running club and I was starting to feel really good in my personal life. But I was still working at this job and I was still feeling really crap. So I was on a work trip in Australia. Again, we're sent there for 3 days on a turnaround trip. So I'm battling jet lag. I'm trying to run this conference. I'm also launching a campaign. I'd got us into Fast Company's Most Innovative Companies 2024. And I was just burnt out. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, you're not happy. You look awful. Like, you've got to make some changes. So on the flight home, I started to sketch out my exit, to start planning what my company would look like, what it would be like. And so every month last year, I think 2024 will definitely go down, it will stay with me forever as my year of just radical change. Quit my job, but didn't really have a plan. But I think the truth is, you shouldn't have a plan to know exactly what you're going to do. You just have to start making those steps and just seeing where that takes you. So my what the fuck moment is just like taking action and starting to really take ownership about what I wanted to do with my life.
Nice. And I think it's weird when you talk about that what the fuck happened moment, it's very different in the retrospective than it is in the moment.
Yeah.
So can you talk about it, like, in that moment? Obviously there are different elements of, like, personal life, career choices, where you live. Can you talk about the sort of the turmoil of the moment, and then how it is so important to have those moments when you look back at it and you see how many good decisions you've made off the back of that?
I had no idea how to run a company. So, like, how do you find clients? I remember asking ChatGPT, like, how do I find clients? How is this all going to work? In that time, I remember being scared every day, thinking, what the fuck have I just done? I've just left a really well-paying job. I've got shares in the company. Like, it's very secure. And what am I going to do? But I think when you take those steps, it is just little by little. Like, you don't realize that at the time, but you are making progress every day. So right before I launched the company or announced the company, I'd actually reached out to a friend, Nick Lafferty. He's the ex-head of revenue marketing from Loom. He'd done something similar 6 months prior, and he was documenting that journal through LinkedIn. He ran a newsletter called The Exit Club. So it was really transparent about, like, how much money he was making, how it was all working. And I reached out to him just for some advice. And he was like, look, you were already saying the things that it actually took me like 3 months to figure out, like the sales strategy, how I was going to go and actually make this happen. And he was like, you're going to be fine. You're absolutely going to be fine. And he gave me some advice to get some sticky notes, write some little notes to yourself, like words of affirmation, words of encouragement, because you're in for a lonely ride. You're going to have self-doubt every day, but just know you're going to be fine. And then he also introduced me to his friend, Tamara, who is the ex-VP of product marketing from Kajabi. She'd also done something similar a year prior. And she said the same thing to me. She was like, look, you're going to make it work one way or the other. Trust in yourself and it'll be fine. And I think you don't realize how important that advice is until you, like you said, the retrospect. So although it was moments of real panic, I wish I could go back and just be like, don't worry about it, you know? But if you didn't have to worry about it, maybe you wouldn't have worked so hard to make it actually work, you know?
For sure. Essentially, what you're doing now is using a lot of the same skills you've learned through working for a company, right? But the big difference is you're doing it from the outside and you're making a lot of the decisions and you're finding the people you want to work with. Can you talk a bit about how that mindset change has changed your life and made you able to, you know, move geographically and change the way you work and the way you can structure your career, I guess?
I think the mindset shift has been incredible, but also there's nothing more humbling than building your own personal brand. You have to be aware of like, okay, what worked? I thought I knew social media inside out because I've worked in it for 12 years, but it's so different when you're the brand. And so there's nothing more humbling than, you know, doing a post and it get literally no engagement. Like that is teaching you a lesson. That's teaching you, was it the hook? Was it the visual? Was it the message? So I am now learning so much more about storytelling and how to present myself, how to come from a place of authenticity in the stories that I'm sharing. So it's been a real mindset shift to like, in a little bit, just get over yourself. Like, who cares if it doesn't work? You care far more than you think other people do. Like, people are not looking at your post as much as you think they are. So what if something doesn't work? That's at least teaching you something. It's helping you figure out how to tell your story in a more authentic way. And so, yeah, for me, it's been a real humbling experience. But on the flip side, you're really lucky if you get to work for a company which gives you the opportunity to go and do the work that you believe in. Like, that's really hard to find those environments. So for me, what I love now is I can go and chase the types of clients I want to work with. I can go and do the work that I really believe in. Like, I've been a big fan of LinkedIn for a long time, but I was an observer, not a participator. But I could see the power and the opportunity and the growth that you can have if you invest in that channel. So now I can go and double down and do that work and get better at doing that type of activity for clients. And so for me, it's been like the best decision that I've ever made.
You've mentioned a phrase, freedom, fulfillment, and finance.
Yeah.
In that order. How do you balance those priorities in your life?
So I actually heard this on a podcast with Ali Abdal, because for me, when I went solo, I remember reaching out to a VC friend to kind of just soundboard what I was looking to do. And he said to me, like, you're not in this for the money, are you? And like, I am someone that likes to make money, to spend money. But for me, I'm really passionate about doing the work that I enjoy. And I think if you work really hard and do the things that you love, like, money comes as a byproduct to that. So that's why I'm really, really passionate about doing the work that brings me freedom. And that's freedom to get to travel. I'm someone that loves to go and visit new countries. I want my work and my business to fit in and around my life. And I think work-life balance is just such a misconception. Like, why do you need work-life balance if you love what you do? I think it's far more impactful to look after, to go after like work-life integration. So I make my work now work for me and the life that I want to live. So I have the freedom to go and look for the types of clients, do the kind of work that I'm passionate about. Because at the end of the day, if you're working for a company, you're reliant on that job. And if that job is taken away from you, like, you're pretty fucked to begin with. Like, of course you can go and find another job, but that security is pretty fragile. So for me, I want to be doing the type of work that brings me freedom to go and do the things that I like to do. Have that fulfillment come from being able to have the time, the luxury of time to go and do those things that I like to do in both a personal capacity and in a work life as well. And then I think, like I said, I think if you're doing work that you really love and you're having a good time, I think there's no way that the money doesn't follow.
Nice. I mean, weirdly enough, we actually have a 3 Fs rule, but they're all completely different Fs. So obviously there are lots of important Fs out there.
Yeah.
Just like our own F of this podcast. But we have fun, fame, and fortune. We engaged with a guy, Adam, who he ran a creative agency and now became a consultant for production companies. So we started working with him a while back, and he actually brought in this idea of scoring our projects when we're in the prospecting stage and then afterwards as well. And we use this triangle, the 3 Fs, to sort of try and gauge. Each one's out of 2. You get a 0, a 1, or a 2.
Yeah.
And then essentially when we're looking at our pipeline, we try and prioritize the things that are the higher scores, obviously, but like balance of scores as well.
Yeah.
So if we have loads of fortune projects but no fun ones,
Yeah.
we're like, okay, let's go and search for some fun, because we need to have fun at the same time.
Yeah.
That sort of chimes with what you're saying about, yes, we're all driven by money and we want to sustain ourselves and live the life we want to live. And we live in a world where money dictates quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
But there's also something you talked about in terms of the energy that can be drained when you're not doing the thing that drives you, right? So
100%.
so the in your Fs, the freedom and fulfillment should be balanced into that.
100%. That's my pursuit, to have the freedom, the fulfillment, and the finance, right? And so when I was thinking about the values of my company, similar to yours, I have based that on, I want to do good marketing. I know how it feels like to produce some pretty crap marketing when you are making decisions by committee. It's not really your idea and it's not something that you're really wanting to do, but you're having to do it because your CEO says that's what they want to do. Like, it sucks and it doesn't make you feel good. It's not, you want to be proud of the work that you're doing. So my values are good marketing. I want to produce work that I'm really proud of, that my clients feel really proud of. I want to work with good people, because when you are working with good people, you can't fake that energy. You just have, the vibe is there, right? And I want to have a good time, because you know, when you see work that you admire, guaranteed that has been created by a team that felt empowered, that felt good energy, and they're really proud of that work. So that's it. I think, so those 3 Fs in like an embodiment of values, that's how I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, right, is this work? Is it good marketing? Am I working with a good team? Am I going to have a good time doing this?
Do you know Alan Watts? He's you'll know his voice because he's used in a lot of like music samples where they want everything to sound like really philosophical.
Can you do an impression?
No, I can't actually. It's he's a philosopher who went off and learned like Eastern philosophy, and he got very into like Buddhism and sort of Hinduism and various other religions and philosophies, and then came back and did lots of lectures in the sort of 70s in the UK. And he is sampled a lot, and you hear him in, you know, videos and songs and all this kind of stuff. He's got one of those sort of voices, very sort of Stephen Fry, David Attenborough type.
Yeah. Which you have, I think, as well.
Whoa, don't set me up there. I'm trying my best. But yeah, no, I think he has this, one of his most sampled lectures is essentially around the perversion of the career. And he says the perversion of career and money. And the fact that a lot of people prioritize that fortune F and completely forget about the other two. And he says he went to speak about a lot of people who are sort of at the end of their life or on their deathbed to sort of do a philosophical examination of what people regret. And it's never the money or making enough money. It's always the other two.
Yeah.
It's the people you hang out with and the fun and energy you have had throughout your life.
100%.
So I think it's good that you're balancing your Fs.
Yeah.
You did go from a very financially comfortable place, and you made that decision to take all the risk and not knowing whether you'd ever make that kind of money again, right?
Yeah.
And going into that unknown, probably partly because you needed the other 2 Fs to come back. So did you trust yourself when you were walking away from that financial stability for the other 2 Fs?
I'm a big fan of Mel Robinson's podcast and just her philosophies in general. And it stuck with me when I heard this segment of, there's no way if you work so hard that it won't work. And so I was willing, I mean, fortunately, having sold my house, all my belongings, I had cash in the bank. So I had a run rate. I knew I had like a certain amount of time to make it work. And for the first 2 months, I had no clients. And that was pretty scary. I was like, oh my Lord, like what's going to happen now? And that's where I just think like the power of community, because although it took me 2 months to sign that contract, really it was only a month of feeling like, oh my Lord, I don't know what to happen. Like, I need clients to come through the door. And it was actually my first contract came from a referral, actually from your business partner and your client that needed some help. And since then, actually, I'm 100% referral based at the moment. So I do work for a client. They then introduce me to their network, their clients as well. So I knew it was going to work one way or the other. And I knew I also didn't have as big of an ego that if it didn't work, I could go and apply for another job. But I really did believe in myself. I thought, you will make this work one way or the other. And I think when I look back at my career, and I think most people don't give themselves enough like credit of like, you've always made it work. Think about like your worst time in life. Like you've always gotten through those, and you're always going to have those moments of like, what the fuck? But like, look, it's so important to look back and like, actually, do you even recognize that person that you used to be? And look at how much you've grown from those experiences. So yeah, for me, I knew it was going to work one way or the other. I had the mindset of like, just don't take your foot off the gas until it does actually work. And that really got me through.
How close did you get to looking at read.com for job opportunities? Did you have a moment like that, or were you really sort of blink of vision?
No, blink of vision.
Okay.
For me as well, when I knew I had to leave that company, and again, because my energy just had gone, like I used to love that company so much and will always be grateful of the lessons, the growth that I had. But my energy had started to really shift. And then I thought, Emily, you've done this actually countless times. Like you always reach this limit about 2.5 years in where you're like, is this it? Like, and so for me, I didn't want to go down that really soul destroying process again of applying for jobs. Like that whole process is so broken. And so I had actually tried to set my own business up before. I'd created a jewelry business in lockdown, which got off the ground, had never studied jewelry design or like I had no idea what to do, but I made that work. And actually it was a really beautiful brand, broke even. So I knew I could make it work. And I think for me, the realization on that flight home from Australia was like, why have I always thought if I was to go and start a business, why wouldn't it be in marketing? That's been my whole life. Like it's been what I've been passionate about since I was quite young. It's what I studied at universities. It's always what I've worked in. Why do I have to go and build a new product or build a new service? Like, why isn't it just marketing? Because actually, I really like marketing work, right? So for me, I knew I could make it work, yeah.
What are your thoughts around like personal branding and how it's becoming more and more important for people to be their own brand and sort of have their own authenticity around talking about themselves and their career? Such
a good question. So if you think about LinkedIn, and that for me is one of the most powerful channels. There's 1 billion people on LinkedIn and only 3% are posting actively each week. So it's nothing, right? The bar to entry is far lower than you think. The audacity that people think that they should be like, have thousands of followers and so much clout from day one is pretty ridiculous. You have to realize that one, the bar to entry is lower than you think, but understand it's the most rewarding journey to go and try and just see what happens. Put yourself out there, find your voice, find your confidence, and you grow as a person so much. Like I look now at the opportunities that have come my way through LinkedIn, even before I started building my personal brand. I was always looking at LinkedIn for, you know, words of encouragement, to learn from other professionals in my line of work, just the opportunity that it can give you if you go and use it to what it's there for, which ultimately is a community channel to go and promote yourself and find work. And so for me, I'm really passionate about LinkedIn. At the end of the day, if you look at any big brand, like the Teslas, the Virgins of the world, like, do you know Virgin as well as you know Richard Branson? Do you know Tesla as much as you know Elon Musk? Like people buy from people. And I think if you are an executive or a founder of a business and you're not invested in your personal brand, like you're sleeping on one of the biggest growth channels and the strategies that you could do, you know, in a world where now it's so difficult to get paid marketing to really give you the returns that it used to. Just by you putting yourself out there, the opportunities that come your way is next level. I was actually following, looking at a story yesterday, a creator on Instagram. She's a midwife from the UK. She's now moved to Australia. And she was talking on her stories about like, when she first started posting, her colleagues would be like, why are you being so embarrassing? Like, it's really cringy what you're doing, which basically was documenting the life of a midwife. And had she listened to those, she would have stopped doing what she's doing now, which she built her brand to a point where she was now able to leave her job in the UK. She moved to Australia. She's got so many opportunities. She has brand partnerships. And it was like, if you listen to people that are negative about something that you in your core want to go and do, then think about all those wasted opportunities. And I think that's for me been one of the most powerful realizations that I have, of just like, I don't care anymore about what people think. Yes, I might question for a few seconds before I hit post. But for me, I know if I'm now writing my content, like I'm coming from a place of authenticity. It's my stories, it's my beliefs, it's my point of view. And that's been able to, open loads of doors for me. So I'm so glad that I don't listen to that negative voice in my head anymore.
And I think that idea of authenticity is really important. I used to be really into writing, in fact, I didn't used to be into writing. I used to be into the idea of writing.
Yeah.
But I read a lot of stuff like Stephen King on writing, and all the books that sort of tell you how to write. Some of them attempt to tell you how to write. And then the good ones tell you just write.
Yeah.
And then they say it will come. You essentially just find, and it's repetition and the
100%.
doing. You can't read a load of books and then immediately start writing and find out you found your voice.
Yeah.
It's this iterative process. And I think it's very similar with the personal branding thing. It's just you're not writing fictional novels for people to read. You're writing interesting things about yourself and learning how to communicate that in copy and potentially podcast or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Finding that authenticity is such an important part of it, because there is a lot of guff out there, and a lot of people who probably haven't bothered thinking, what am I? And there's a lot of regurgitation as well. Mm-hmm. Was that a long process for you? Was it an awkward process? I found it incredibly awkward. When I first started posting on LinkedIn, I was like, this is rubbish. I hate this. I've got a very British sensibility, which is like modest and humble. I don't really want to brag.
Yeah.
And then I think slowly became used to the idea, I'm not bragging, I'm sharing. Mm-hmm. And actually a lot of mine is very tongue-in-cheek and self-deprecating, but it's still a bit like, I've had some successes too.
Yeah.
And I think you slowly get to the comfortability point of, I'm happy to share this.
Exactly. It's the most humbling experience, because I know when I was first starting, I was studying the people that were getting like thousands of likes, thousands of shares. And I was like, oh my God, like how are they doing that? And if I would try and imitate them, it was good in a way that it was helping me understand how to craft a good post, like the hook, the body, the rehook, the call to action. But that wasn't my story. And those posts would always flop. So it's amazing to learn how to write better, like you said, in the types of mediums. What you post on LinkedIn isn't going to do very well on Instagram. So it's figuring out the content formats, but ultimately, like, only you know your opinions, only you know your style of writing, your personality. So it's given me loads of confidence, because when you're growing up, I remember, I'll never forget actually, when I was in university, one of my lecturers, so I studied PR, I've always worked in brand marketing, but started in PR. And my tutor said to me, you might want to reconsider PR because you're really shy and quite forgettable. And it's like, that stuck with me for so long that I thought, fucking hell, like, oh my God, I've just spent all this money to come to university. Like, is this like just the biggest waste of time? And I used that actually I was going to make this work, and it's almost like a bit of a fuck you. And I actually wrote to him not long ago to say, just so you know, you said this to me once and it stuck with me for years, but I just want to tell you, like, don't do that again. Like, don't break someone's dreams at a point where you're already insecure enough as it is. And so for me, coming back to your original question, like personal branding, if you don't feel confident and you don't know what to do, go and invest in personal branding, because it will give you so much confidence. It will open so many doors, and it will make you, it will just give you that clarity that actually you know what to do and you know who you are, but you've got to spend the time going to find that out.
That's less of a what the fuck happened and more of the what the fuck did you just say? I really like this story about Wetherspoons is not the guy who set it up's name, but it's the name of his teacher at school, who in one class, because he was a clown joker and never paying attention and obviously not a great student, his teacher turned around to him and said, you're never going to amount to anything. And that teacher's name was Mr. Wetherspoon.
Wow.
So
didn't
the
know
whole
that.
brand of Wetherspoons is set up as a fuck you.
Really?
Yeah.
It's almost like the underdog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you thought I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So in a way, you will go back and say, don't say that to people. But in a way, that put a fire in your belly. So
Well, his reply was hilarious. It's like, I'm so glad that I gave you what you needed to go and like be successful. Like, yeah.
aren't I great? So you talk as well about community a lot, and the fact that that's been more and more important as you went into your freelance fractional CMO career. How do you build those, and how do you make them meaningful?
I think community, it's become a bit of a buzzword, and a lot of people think they have a community, but they really have an audience. And you know that you've built a community when you need that audience to do something and they actually do it. So, you know, it's transactional. It has to be a two-way thing. And you have to be investing in the time to get to know your audience, to clap for them when they win. Because otherwise, when you need that audience to do something like sign up to a newsletter, or it might be to come to an event, or it might be to buy a product, if it's tumbleweed, that means you haven't invested in that community as much. So for me, it's really important because, like I said, when I went live with my business, I had people come out and clap for me that I never even knew were watching. And like I said, also, my first contract came from someone that was in my community who must have liked what I was sharing and could see what it would be like to work with me. And so I think community the importance of community will only get stronger and stronger, especially as we see more online businesses coming through. And you can see that twofold as well. If you're an online business, the power of actually taking your business offline and nurturing those relationships. And then similarly, the businesses that are purely offline, how that needs to be translated into your online world. So for me, it's really important that I provide value and education and entertainment. Again, there are other buzzwords that everyone says you need to do that, but how do you actually do that? Are you listening to what your community is asking for, are talking about? Are you following them to see what content they like and engage with? And so I'm really keen of making sure that I'm not posting for the sake of it. I always have an intent behind why am I sharing this? Who am I looking to help? So that I hopefully can provide value. And I think proof's in the pudding when you need that audience to do something. Do you have a community or do you have an audience?
It's interesting to know that like you're not shouting into an echo chamber. Do you know what I mean? Because quite often, I'll see my godfather for the first time in 2 years. And I'll be like trying to catch him up. He's like, I know exactly what you've been up to. I'm like, I follow you on LinkedIn. I'm like, what? And it's this weird thing and I've had that quite a lot where, you get a few likes and a few comments. You think, oh, a few people saw that. And you don't realize there's this whole other group of people who, probably just don't bother liking stuff and don't bother commenting, but they are actively reading your posts. And I think that's quite a nice effect of doing these things and then quite a lot later finding out
they're working.
And this slow drip of, clients who come in and then you realize we went for a sort of holiday pre-Christmas lunch with a client and we're chatting to them and then we kind of worked out, oh, we know you because you read some of our posts and then you messaged us and then we met, but we'd completely forgotten that actually our posts on LinkedIn that they had engaged with were the genesis of our relationship. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it, nothing vacuous about it. It's 100%. Just, you're building a community of people who then suddenly go, you know what? Yeah. I just read that post and that really is sort of a chance of what we need right now.
Exactly. And I think there's so much, especially when there's more and more and more personal branding gurus that are popping up left, right and centre that are really promoting the vanity aspect of like invest in your personal brand and you'll get thousands of followers and you have thousands of likes. But actually, if you get 50 likes on a post consistently, imagine that 50 people in a room with you. 50 is still a lot. It doesn't have to be that you are, of course, we all want to have the biggest numbers. That gives you credibility. It means that you are good at what you do. But at the same time, as long as people are actually engaging with you, and like you said, they might not be even engaging with every post, but they're listening to what you're saying. Your message, the subliminal messaging, what you're putting out, it lands. And I just think there is an insane amount of opportunity in just putting yourself out there and seeing where that takes you.
I think that scale thing is interesting because I do think that the numbers are. I've always been quite interested in this sort of the linear scale of like, for example, countries just look at GDP and they're like, all we care about is the gross domestic product of our country. If it goes up, we're doing well. If it goes down, and it's the same for a lot of social channels. It's like, how many followers do you have? Oh, well, I've got 10,000 more. That's, I'm 20% better than you. And actually, could be a load of bots, could be a load of people who are just vanity following or whatever it is. And I think, obviously numbers are just numbers and they're easy to track and compare. But the as you say, if you had 50 people and only that who engage, but they'd all come and sit in a room with you and have a chat and add value, there could just be a lot more value in that. So I do think there's this sort of, as you say, the numbers mean something, but they don't mean everything.
The numbers give you credibility, and the numbers are a testament that something's working, right? The more you're growing, that you're doing something right. But I don't think numbers are the end game. I think it's more about the influence, the impact that you're having with that content. People thinking about you of like, I need X. Who would I go to? Well, do you know about this guy? He does this thing. Like, think about, that's why I always ask my clients, and I think to myself, like, why am I doing this? Who do I want to be a hero to? And how am I going to influence them for the better? So it's not about numbers. Of course it helps, but that just helps you get the foot in the door. Ultimately, you need to be able to sell yourself, to understand your value proposition and what value you bring to your community.
It's fair to say, started a journey that may feel reasonably at the beginning of said journey. We've come in to, we're recording at the beginning of 2025, not to date this podcast if anyone's listening in the future, but I'm interested where what's your vision for what you are doing, and where do you see yourself going? What's next?
I feel like I'm still, like, I've only been live for 6 months. I've got 6 months of lessons, learnings, and I still don't know what the end goal is. What I like about my brand name, so the Good Marketing Club, I like that naturally within that there's a sense of community. Like, people want to be part of an association, and I'm still figuring out what that looks like. At the moment, I'm very much time-based. So clients come to me either through consultancy, it might be personal branding, one-to-one coaching, but I ultimately want to help as many people as possible overcome the fears that they have to then go and create a life that they can be really, really proud of. And for me, what I see that in is more founder-led brands. And because you just don't know until you give it a go. So helping people understand who they are and to tell that story and seeing where those opportunities take them. I think it sounds quite cliche, but we all have dreams, and not enough of us actually go after what we want to do with our lives. And I think the more people that can just understand, it's just fear. And fear, like, run at fear, don't run away from fear, because everything that you actually want is typically on the other side of the things that you're afraid of.
Nice. So I've got one more thought experiment for you. It's the first time we've tried it, so bear with me. But the What the Fuck Happened podcast is all about the journey, and that journey, like storytelling, which is the business we're both in, is never a straight line.
Nope.
So I just want you to close your eyes for a second and think about the journey we've been discussing in the podcast, and then just slowly, I want you to trace in the air your squiggle. This is your journey, and I just want you to describe, because this is also an audio thing, not just a video thing. Or you just describe what your squiggle is while you're tracing it in the air.
Right.
Do you have your squiggle in your mind?
That was last year.
Okay. It's like watching someone do their signature. So it was a straight line for a little bit there. And then it sort of went curvy and went down, and then it went sort of up, and there was a little flicky loop at the end.
A flicky loop?
Yeah, you did a little flicky loop thing.
Flicky loop, I think, is like the fear of knowing I'm going to go and do this thing, and then it taking off. Nice. So the flick is where I'm at now.
A little loop-de-loo.
The start is just flatlining. I feel like I was masking for so much of my like childhood and early adulthood, and then it's like you just learn confidence, don't you? But then that confidence isn't linear either. Like it ebbs and flows. So.
No, it's nice. We'll get you to draw that at some point. So Emily, it's been lovely having you on the What the Fuck podcast.
Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Is there anywhere people can find you? Do you want to plug yourself? Do you have a website, socials? Sounds like you have a LinkedIn channel.
I do actually, yeah. Funny you should ask that. So on LinkedIn, it's Emily Dunlop and my company's called The Good Marketing Club. So I also have just launched not long ago a newsletter called The Good Life. So each week I share a tip around going to create a life that you love.
So where do you like people to find you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. That's the place.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much for coming
Thank
on
you
the
so
What the
much.
Fuck podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the What the Fuck Happened podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to listen to more, subscribe to our channel. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. What the fuck happened there?